Yulia, the voice of the podcast Love to Heal, a journey of self-discovery, healing, and spiritual growth. Welcome back to episode 5 of Love to Heal. Let's dive into the topic of judging. Judging people, situations, the past, and the future. Who has never judged someone? I think it's safe to say we've all done it. But do you know how harmful to the judgment of others can be? I had no idea until I started on this spiritual journey. I've touched on the subject of monotheism in previous episodes, and it's equally important here if we wish to comprehend what judgment really is and why it can be so harmful. Monotheism means that everything is created by one God and all people are one. Therefore, the internal superiority of one person over another is a break in unity and thus destruction of love. Judging another person gives a feeling of superiority and breaks unity at the level of the soul. In other words, condemnation automatically leads to loss of love. And if you've listened to episode number 4 of Love to Heal, you know that loss of love certainly leads to loss of health. You might say, okay, it's not that difficult to tell myself to stop judging others, right? We can watch our behavior and try not to judge our friends, random people on the street, our neighbors. But what about judging really bad people, like criminals? So criminals should still be punished. But the idea here is that those doing the punishing should refrain from internally judging the criminal. Because if they condemn and despise the criminal, they're taking the first step towards a crime themselves, since they abandon love in their soul. And abandoning love in the soul is how crimes begin in the first place. Remember the term and the idea of living dialectically? Here it is again. The ability to punish a wrongdoer without judgment. The only way to understand this duality is by, again, accepting unity amongst all beings in our universe, which means no one person is superior, and there's only one judge, God. Remind yourself that no one on this planet chose to be born into their body, into their mind, into their circumstances. All this is decided for us in a divine plan, which takes into account the past and the future. And this plan is not revealed to us humans. So who are we to judge anyone or anything if we can't see the complete picture? Past life therapists have reported interesting patterns of the evolution of the soul. For instance, the noblest of people may be reborn in the next life as criminals, and vice versa. Oftentimes, the victim of a crime was the criminal in previous lives and is being punished now that karma has caught up. We can only see the tip of the iceberg, and therefore should not judge anyone for their behavior or beliefs or life choices. Instead, we should focus on ourselves, on preserving love in any and all situations. If we follow the belief of monotheism, the unity of all people on earth, then by hating or even killing the criminal, we will be killing a part of ourselves. Whatever we put out into the universe will, like a boomerang, come back to us. and often with greater strength. While punishment is needed for a criminal, it should not have the goal of destroying that person, but rather of helping, supporting, and educating him or her. Another kind of judging that we often experience is feeling bad for someone. Something that stuck with me that my teacher explained, my spiritual teacher, was not to feel bad for cripples, people with disabilities, homeless people. In general, do not feel bad for anything, because when you do, you first of all start to question divine will. And when you question it using human logic, you start to develop aggression and consequently lose love in the soul. This, of course, won't help you or anyone. We must remind ourselves that everything is according to plan. And if you wish to help somehow to the person in need or the person with disabilities, by all means do. Just don't be a judge on what's wrong or right. The disabled person was possibly a great athlete in their previous life, but perhaps they had a really big ego and are being humbled now in this current life. Another point of view I must mention here is that those to whom unfortunate events happen often attract them, or, as I mentioned earlier, are paying back karmically for crimes committed in a previous life. People say that life is unfair, but in reality, it is very fair. Each person gets what he or she deserves, depending on past lives and or present behavior and thought patterns. Since we can't see the bigger picture, only a fragment of time in which we live, to us these events may seem unfair. While some things like past lives are beyond our control, some things we do have control over. As the law of attraction states, we should look at ourselves, look inside when something bad happens, because it's likely that we attracted this situation. For example, if you believe people are out to get you, to rob you, to deceive you, they will. I have a friend who never locks her doors in the house or in the car because she's so certain nothing will happen. She believes if something is destined to happen, it will happen no matter what. Our thoughts, our emotions, our energy is like a magnet and will attract the like. It's our daily choice to seek love or to seek fear. If you believe that you're surrounded by kind, good people, you will be surrounded by these kind and good people that will have no reason to rob you, steal something from you, to insult you. And even if we owe something karmically, we have the power to change our destiny for the better by choosing love always. Let's get back to judging and touch on the evolution of our society in this aspect. Historically speaking, as the author Sergei Lazarev writes, in ancient Greece and other pagan states, imperfect children and adults were often killed. In Judaism, probably for the first time in history, the process of re-educating people began through mercy and sacrifice. Later, with Jesus, the next stage of education arose. Now, it turned out that through love, it's possible to change and educate many people, even criminals. Most people that commit crimes are either mentally unstable, in which case it's not a personal matter, you just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, otherwise known as destiny, or the criminals lack love in the soul, which results in aggression and committing crimes. If while in prison, for example, these people can be treated humanely and shown kindness and support, there's a chance for them to change for the better. This is why many inmates turn to religion, because they feel the need to improve their self-concept. They may have committed a crime that left them with guilt and remorse, and faith and love is the best way to heal emotionally. Today, it seems that many people who deem themselves religious confuse love with superficial religion. They stubbornly ask in prayer to remove their sins without lifting a finger. They think that they can sin all they want and then be forgiven. But prayer without actual work is dead. This is why spirituality is a journey. It's daily conscious work. It's striving to become better, to love. Only then prayer works. And even then, prayer should never be about asking God or the universe for material things or health or any earthly desires for that matter. It should only be about growing love in the soul, to make love a priority. Something else that we need to understand is that the commandments are addressed to our soul, not to our body. When, for instance, we hear the phrase, turn the other cheek, this means that if you've been insulted or betrayed, do not take revenge on that person. Do not despise or be offended by him or her, because this experience was placed in your path by God. When you accept that all happenings are provided by God, you stop blaming others for what happened to you, and you start to explore and seek answers inside of yourself for why this particular situation came up in your life. I know it sounds insane to have to learn to love the murderer or the robber, but this is the only way to love unconditionally and accept that everything in this universe stems from God and has a purpose. Think of the soul, not the body. The next time someone insults you, you will have several options of protection because you are absolutely entitled to protect yourself. But you can choose from the following. You can take out a knife and kill the offender. You can beat him or her up. You can call him or her names. Or you can keep your peace and calm and say to yourself, God will be your judge. Leave it to God to take care of the incident. If you maintain love in the soul at that moment, turning off human logic and turning on the divine logic, you will have passed this test and preserved your health. To take it one step further, you can pray about the incident, asking the offender for forgiveness for making that person want to insult you. This is the best kind of protection. It will help you grow spiritually, removing the need for future insults. This is what turning the other cheek means. Don't strike back to cause the other person pain, because this will only result in hurting you. Any kind of response will trigger aggression and loss of love in the soul. Similarly, we should learn not to judge situations, because when we do so, we're using human logic driven by the ego. To the extent that we see and feel the divine will in everything that happens, the less hatred and malice we need in our defense. New information for our soul comes through unexpected situations, or tests, as I have been calling them. The more rigidly we defend ourselves, the less our ability to adapt to the world around us, and for our soul to learn and grow. A good example for such a situation occurred at the onset of the COVID pandemic. Many of us tried our hardest to avoid getting infected, sterilizing everything in sight, and avoiding contact with others. And we still got sick, often unexplicably. Fear is a great magnet for all kinds of infections and diseases. The best protection, the best form of protection, which energetically boosts the immune system, is still love in the soul. This and the trust in divine will. There have been so many medical unexplicable cases where people came down with infections while never being in contact with an infectious person. And the other way around too, where while being in contact with an infected person, the others never got infected. All this proves that there's more to contracting diseases than meets the eye. But coming back to judging people and situations, it's imperative to understand that all forms of insults, offenses, and other unpleasant occurrences are acting as medicine for our soul. They actually save us and our offspring by letting our soul learn, become wiser, and progress. Once we become awakened by understanding that it's not a person that insults us or robs us, it's our Creator trying to teach and heal us through that person, putting that criminal or that unfortunate situation in our life, it becomes so much easier to live and to deal with anything life may throw at us. When we forgive someone, let go, or turn the other cheek, we accept the loss of earthly happiness for that instant. And if in that instant we hold on to the divine love in us, we gain divine happiness, which produces even more love in the soul, which will protect us from illnesses and future unfortunate events. When someone hurts you, remind yourself, this person is part of the divine plan that was sent to test you, to teach your soul something important. It also helps to see the child in this person. Picture him or her as a baby, which we all were once. It's impossible and pointless to hate a baby. You can put yourself in the role of the parent, if it helps, to understand that an upbringing of fear and humiliation is lethal to the child and suicidal for the parent. If we don't like something in the behavior of the child, it's up to us to change ourselves and help the child change. We can scold and punish the child, but we must always forgive and love him or her. You can do this with people in your life, with adults. Try to see the child in them. This will really help. Changing ourselves for the better affects all people around us. I mentioned this in a previous episode that after I began to consciously practice love, I noticed the absence of mean and irritating people in my life. And if by chance they do cross my path, I know how to handle myself in such a situation. I see them as a child lacking love. I see them as a reminder that I too am imperfect and can change for the better. Changing ourselves changes the world around us. Finally, I'd like to address the judging of past and future events. Firstly, you should know that spiritually and energetically, the past, present, and future exist simultaneously. They are part of a whole. The separation of them is nothing more than an illusion created by our minds. this representation of the universe emerged from Einstein's theory of relativity, by the way. What we did in the past is, of course, affecting us today. And naturally, what we're doing today will impact our future. And what will happen in the future is also affecting us today, but more on this at another time. So the same goes for past and future lives. Knowing this, we understand that anything we didn't let go of in the past is affecting us today. And burdens like remorse, blame, resentment that stay with us after a wrong is committed, for example, are detrimental to our health and prevent us from moving forward onto better things. So how do we deal with past events that don't let us live peacefully? First and foremost, just like when wanting to judge people, we should turn off human logic to stop the rise of aggression. Then remind ourselves that everything we did in the past and everything that happened to us was for a reason. Our past made us into who we are today. And thinking of our soul, which is the priority, it has grown wiser and more experienced. We must accept the past, be thankful for it, and let it go. I'm sure you've heard people advise you to stay in the present, live in the moment. This is because the past and the future can rob us of the present. And the present is the only time when we have any power at all. Of course, it's natural to reminisce and think about what you have planned for tomorrow, but dwelling on past events over which we no longer have any control is useless and energetically draining. Similarly, worrying about the future fills us with negative emotions, creating a mental trap of sorts in which we feel victimized and miss out on real life. What is worry? Worry is the intent to try to control what is essentially uncontrollable. The future, right? I told you in the first episode of my many years of anxiety that I suffered due to the lack of trust in the process of life. I wanted to control the future. I didn't trust that everything would work out. I imagined all possible outcomes of an event. I thought I knew better what should happen in my life. I wanted to be in control, and this process used up so much of my life energy that I couldn't enjoy life. Now, when I look back at all those years of useless worry, I don't judge myself or my past. I choose to grow from it. We all have baggage from the past. That's normal. But it's what we do with it that dictates our present and future. I understand that with some physical and emotional trauma, it can be difficult to stop reliving the pain when it's triggered. But once again, if you start to feel the feelings of past events creep into the present, don't judge. Don't let your ego make you a victim of the past. Don't fight the emotions either. Let them flow through you as you bring yourself back to the present moment. You can try feeling the floor under your feet or your back against the chair. Remind yourself that you are in control of the present moment and choose love and trust of the divine plan. Whatever happened in the past served its purpose, and we can move on to focus on the present. So, if you find yourself judging a person or a situation, acknowledge it and stop it. Realize that it's your ego talking at the moment and replace it with unconditional love. Sergei Lazarev does a nice job outlining in his book Diagnosis of Karma the steps he takes to deal with hardships. He writes that after numerous troubles that he lived through, he developed for himself several rules for survival. Number 1, in a critical situation, turn off the assessment of the situation, the human logic. Don't ask yourself, what will happen to me next? Will I survive? See a higher will in what happened. Number 2, God never gives misfortunes or tests beyond our strength. In any event that occurs, there is a positive purpose aimed at developing the higher layers of our human self. This may not be clear until later on in your life. Number 3, you should never be afraid or angry at a situation, as you will only be at a loss. Fear of the future is disbelief in God, in a higher will. Repeat to yourself, everything is God's will. What's happening is a trial to help me overcome myself and evolve spiritually. Number 4, no matter what happens, try with all your might to preserve the feeling of love in your soul. And number 5, prepare for hardships in advance by imagining the collapse of your earthly possessions, relationships, and desires, and say, God, I accept everything as purification of my soul. No matter what happens, my love for you only increases. There are different ways to tackle difficult situations, and you might find one that works better for you. So let me introduce you to one more. And this one comes from an author and metaphysicist, Connie Mendes from Venezuela, who wrote in her books on metaphysics that every time you come across a person whom your ego wishes to judge, who in your eyes has defects or irritates you, think of that person's heart. It's beating the same way that your heart is beating. Imagine your heart's beating in synchrony. Once your attention switches to the tranquility of the heartbeat, you will have transcended this unpleasant situation. And since you are the more spiritual one, you will be able to transfer your loving, healing energy to the offender. The offender will start to feel at peace, and he or she will feel a change in their mood, and you too will feel better. I also can't help but mention something else that I love about Connie Mendes and the way she writes her books and theories. She, like many other spiritual teachers and writers, state clearly that if you don't agree with some of what I've said and brought to light, don't argue it. Set it aside and come back to it later when you're ready for it. This happened to me when I started my spiritual journey. There were ideas and information that I clearly wasn't ready for, that shocked me and made me question everything. But as time went on, it became easier to comprehend and put to use spiritual practices that I had learned. For instance, when my teacher first talked to me about loving murderers and rapists and such, I couldn't understand how this could be possible. Some years later, it was the most common knowledge for me. It was so obvious because I had now understood the concept of monotheism, that everything is one, that everything is interconnected. So how could you love one but hate another? So if what I'm speaking about does not resonate with you at all, and all you want to do is fight and debate, then you're probably not ready for spiritual awakening for this path. Some links in the chain are missing, and it's no use right now to continue exploring this topic. This doesn't make anyone better or worse. Everyone comes to the awakening on their own schedule, at their own time and place, and in different lives. Maybe in this life, this is not your time. So there's no judgment in that. If, on the other hand, you have been enjoying this podcast, I encourage you to keep listening. There will be so much more that I will cover, so many interesting theories and ideas, and I'm so excited to be sharing all this information with you. So thank you so much for listening. And today I will leave you with a quote from Wayne Dyer, an American self-help author and motivational speaker. Until next time. Judgments prevent us from seeing the good that lies beyond appearances.